Hello, everyone. Dr. Victoria Scarbo here, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center in Wareham, Massachusetts. So, as I promised, we're going to be doing the astrology of January 2021. So let me share my screen with you. All right, here we are. So we're in the first week of January. The first week of January is going to be from the 1st to the 9th. I realize that's a little bit longer than a week, but there's only 2 days this week. And so on the 1st, which today is the 2nd, so this was yesterday. On the 1st, we had a lovely sextile between Neptune and Mercury. I don't know if you felt that. There was I felt it as a sort of a softness and an easing of tension, a opportunity to sort of connect with their spirituality. And I felt very connected to the other side. I felt connected. I was able to, in a way, bubble myself off, and not in a negative sense of, putting my head in the sand necessarily, but just sort of staying in that sacred space that we can do when we're dealing with Neptune. This sextile between Mercury and Neptune is a Aquarius side sextile, and so it had the energy of Aquarius about sharing what you know. One of the things I got to do on the 1st was to do my numerology and Kabbalah for you guys. So there's always that sense of sort of connecting with the larger picture, as it were. We also had the Sun making an inconjunct to the Moon in Leo yesterday, and that can there's challenges in how best to sort of move forward in positions of leadership. Capricorn is very much the energy of the manager, the energy of the boss, middle management, whereas Leo is much more sort of an inspired leader, an inspired leader. One of the things that President Trump was able to do was he inspired many people, but he was a terrible boss. He was a terrible manager. So he had one side of that, but not the other side of that. And so that was an energy that we could have felt. And then tomorrow, there's the 3rd. Today is the 2nd. We have the Sun make a lovely trine to the Moon in Capricorn. So whereas yesterday might have been a little bit challenging in how best to move forward, Sunday we're going to have a nice flow between our need to manage ourselves, our need to be our own boss, so to speak, of our own life. You're not the boss of me, right? That's what the little kids say to you. With a trine of the Moon in Virgo, the Moon being very practical moon. And so it's a good day. There's a flow for figuring out what needs to be done and doing it, right? Being efficient, so tomorrow is actually a good day, even though it is a Sunday, is a good day to sort of plan for the week or plan your plan of action. Figure out what it is that you need to do, and then organize it in such a way that it gets done. So it's a good day to do it, and it's a good day to plan it. It's also a good day to share what you know. And so we can help each other in that. Some people are better at certain things than others. So it's actually a good day to sort of step out and if you need help, ask somebody who knows how to do it. And then vice versa, be willing to do that for somebody else. I think that's a good energy. On Monday the 4th, we have Mercury making its annual conjunction to Pluto, in Capricorn. It's occurring at 25 degrees of Capricorn. Now, what we're going to see is that the personal planets being the Sun and Mercury and Venus, will be making conjunctions to Pluto while those planets are in Capricorn. So it is the start of a new synodic cycle. A synodic cycle is a cycle when two planets come together in a conjunction and then the faster moving planet moves away from the slower moving planet. And some of those cycles are very long, and some of those cycles take a year to come back. Um, when we're dealing with the moon, every month we get a cycle with the moon. But when we're dealing with personal planets, it's usually a once a year cycle. Then when we get to Mars, which is also considered a personal planet, it's generally a 2-year cycle. But we have this new 1-year cycle. Now, Mercury is our ability to communicate. It is the way that we process information. And Pluto comes along as Mercury moves over Pluto. Pluto seeds Mercury with a desire. Pluto is the repository of our unconscious desires, right? And so there's a desire here that gets planted or seeded into Mercury. And then Mercury goes along, and then next year it comes around again to Pluto. And so every year that happens, right? And this year it's happening at 25 degrees of Capricorn. And it says here for the Sabian symbol for 25 degrees of Capricorn is a store filled with precious Oriental rugs. The use of cultural and artistic processes as a means to enhance personal comfort and appreciation. And then it's the key word here is reliance on tradition. It's interesting because as I was doing this, I had a little like thought in my head for those decorators out there. Usually a rug, right, in a room, say a throw rug, and you can have a wall-to-wall rug certainly, but say a throw rug is better example. Is a area that's being demarcated, right? So you put a throw rug in your living room with your couch and your chair and maybe your table that you have there, whatever. It becomes sort of a focus. It becomes an environment, so to speak, for certain things to happen. And I feel like that's symbolized here. So there's an environment for certain things to happen. There's an energy of something that is created, right, by man, so to speak. And so sort of an environment that will support and stand beneath us and help us with our understanding. And of course, Capricorn is about becoming an authority in your own life. And so Mercury conjunct Pluto at 25 degrees of Capricorn with this energy of the Sabian symbol, speaking of rugs. There are prayer rugs, there are, that keep people comfortable while they're praying, right? So there's this level of tradition and level of creativity and level of ability to make your environment more beautiful and more comfortable. Okay, and that I think is part of what the soul is expressing here. And we can look and see this this particular aspect. And here we have Pluto, and we have Mercury right here. This was chart erected for Washington, D.C. I generally erect the charts for the Washington, D.C. So it could be considered a chart for the country. And here we have it happening in the 6th house. The 6th house is the house of service. It's the house of the military. It's the house of healthcare. And this could very well be connected to the issues that we're having with healthcare and COVID, and trying to create an environment that's more comfortable, more utilitarian. A seed is being planted at this time for this. We can see that Pluto and Mercury are still in a square to Mars. Mars is about ready to move out of Aries. It's been there a long time. All right, and this is the 4th. So this is January 4th. Okay, so we can look at that. So the 6th of January, we have Mars ingress into Taurus. Mars finally moves out of Aries, out of its shadow of its retrograde, and moves into Taurus. Now, Mars in Taurus is generally very sort of slow moving and practically oriented. It really is, a Taurus is about our essential needs. What do we need? Okay. It takes a lot for Taurus to get upset generally. There's a sort of slow and steady, wins the race kind of energy with Taurus. If we look at the first degree of Taurus, which Mars moves into, the Sabian symbol is a clear mountain stream, right? The keynote here is the pure, uncontaminated, and spontaneous manifestation of one's own nature. So this is really about being true to yourself. Keyword is its own nature. Now, what's especially important about Mars moving into Taurus is because the year 2021 is a 5 vibration. The 5 vibration, in the tree of life is associated with the sign of Taurus and the Hierophant card. And so this is a very potent time where people will most likely be who they are. Whatever their essential nature is, they will express it. So if they're essentially an ass, they're going to express that. But if they're essentially a good-hearted person, not necessarily the person that you didn't know was there, if you know what I'm saying, you're like, where did that come from? Not that person, but essentially who they are. I feel like people will be coming and acting from that place. So just be aware of that. And true for yourself too. How do you find yourself, moving forward? Slow and steady. That being said, we now have Uranus since 2017, Uranus in Taurus. So as Mars moves into Taurus, it's going to be getting closer and closer to Uranus. At this time, Uranus is retrograde in Taurus. So we actually have Mars moving forward and Uranus moving backwards. And that compression that's occurring, you can actually like sense it. As I do this, even with my hands, I can feel the amount of energy and pressure. And so there's a pressurization that's occurring as we move forward. So it may feel like it's even harder to move forward than usual, but just apply yourself, because what's going to happen is when Uranus and Mars comes together, we're going to have a breakthrough. There's a breakthrough coming. But we will feel an increase of pressure. So while 2021 was a sight for sore eyes for most of us, I think that we're still not quite out of the so to speak, the woods. In fact, when I did I just did a card reading. The immediate future for January was in this particular reading was the three of fire, and in this particular, the cards that I use speaks of letting your inner light guide the way through a dark time. So we're still feeling, we're still not out of the darkness yet, but we have seen the light. We have seen Jupiter and Saturn come together. In the sky, we've seen the perhaps Star of Bethlehem again, with the moon right there. If you've seen that picture, it's just amazing. So we are moving toward the light. We are no longer stuck in the darkness, but there is something that is going to happen. There is something that's going to manifest. And one of the most important things that we can do at this time, I believe, is to focus on what it is you want to create. Don't focus on what everybody's talking about and saying about stuff, but what do you want to create? Where do you want to see your life? Where do you want to focus your intention? Because where your attention goes, energy flows. And so be very particular about where you're putting your energy at this time, especially once Mars moves into Taurus. Okay, so let's take a look at that. And we can see here Just what I was talking about. This is again for Washington, D.C. It occurs in the 10th house. So there is an energy of moving forward, but we can see that as Mars moves into Taurus, right? Um, Uranus is retrograde and moving in this direction. So we have this compression. We have this compression that we're feeling. Let's see if it's doing. It is in conjunct. Well, actually, no, that's Uranus. So never mind. I'm not going to talk about that. Let me just see if it's aspecting anything else. Well, of course it is. It's squaring Saturn and it's squaring Jupiter. Now these squares will become exact in a couple of days, so we'll talk about those. But there is this sort of energy, right? Mars in Taurus, being propelled to a certain extent by its relationship to Saturn and Jupiter in Aquarius. So this is the breakthrough. This is the breakthrough. And then right at the threshold of that breakthrough is Uranus in Taurus, Uranus ruling Saturn and Jupiter. So very exciting time to be alive for sure. So on the 6th of January, which is a Wednesday, the sun makes its last quarter square to the moon in Libra. This is a crisis in consciousness. This is part of the lunation cycle that began with the new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Sagittarius on the 14th of December. That was the day in the United States that the Electoral College said that Joe Biden won the Electoral College, right? The votes came in and he won. Now on the 6th, this is the day that everybody's talking about. This is the day when I guess officially the vice president, you know, the vice president wants to, is supposed to do what the vice president does, some technical thing that they're trying to stop from happening and get rid of the votes. And this is what all the Trumpsters are talking about, is this day, the 6th of January. And on that day, we have an aspect connected to the eclipse. Of course, we know the eclipse is always like a portal for sort of a new, like to break through. Sagittarius, the truth, the south node of the moon is in Sagittarius. And so it's about letting go of something. But in the cycle, just in the lunation cycle itself, it's a time of questioning authority. Are those in power being fair to those who have sworn to defend and lead? The sun is in Capricorn, responsibility. The moon is in Libra. What is fair? What is fair? I personally don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell that they're going to be able to do anything. Joe Biden is going to be president. This is just the last hurrah. And it's interesting because it is connected to that eclipse that was on the south node of the moon of the president. And the moon of the president. And so this is an old like trick. This is it. I mean, it's not an old trick. It's an old trick in his book, but he's utilizing democracy of America. He's pushing, right? Trump is the great sort of like pushing the envelope, and he wants to see. Well, he doesn't want it. He wants victory. He wants power. But what it's actually doing is it's seeing how strong the Constitution, the body of the country is, the laws as a country based on law, and fairness. I guess the United States has Saturn in Capricorn. I mean, has Saturn in Libra, right? The rule of law, right up there, up top. But it also has Neptune in Virgo up top. So. That's another story for another day. This is the 3/4 point of the cycle that began with the new moon solar eclipse at 24 degrees of Sag, which I said. The symbol for 24 degrees of Sag that day was a bluebird perched on the gate of a cottage. The reward which meets every effort at integrating into a social environment for those who remain true to their own selves. So here we have Mars moving into Taurus, asking us to be who we are, and then this last quarter square bringing up the issue of being true to your own self, being true to your own self, and not necessarily in the case of the Republicans being true to somebody who is just trying to disrupt. So I don't think there's a snowball's hell and chance for that. So that's what I think. Okay. On the 9th of January, we have a lovely trine between Venus and Mars. This is a trine of understanding. It has the flavor of Sagittarius. It is social rewards. Venus and Mars are how we relate to one another. Okay. And this goes back to the initial conjunction of these two planets, which actually occurred in 2019 on the 24th of August at 5 degrees of Virgo. And it says, at 5 degrees of Virgo, a man becoming aware of nature spirits and normally unseen spiritual agencies, the opening of new levels of consciousness, So as we approach this time of breakthrough, we are in alignment and aware of new levels of consciousness. We've been working this out. We've a lot of the symbology that has been spoken of in the last year or so has been around this sort of awakening and well, actually the last 4 years, actually a little bit longer than that. But really coming to fore this year in 2020, when most people could only sit and think. Okay. On Friday as well, we also have Mercury make a conjunction to Saturn at 3 degrees of Aquarius. Saturn and Mercury is a synodic cycle that is a year long. It's a year-long synodic cycle. Saturn is about structure. Mercury is about ideas. And so when they come together, this is the new idea, the new consciousness, Mercury, aligning with Saturn. And then Mercury moves away from Saturn because it's the faster moving planet and goes out and seeks the information that it needs to create the structure that Saturn has seeded it with, right? And so 3 degrees of Aquarius, the symbol is a deserter from the Navy. Wow, that's interesting, isn't it? The keynote here is individual self-realization through a crucial repudiation of a collective status which has become unbearable. So this is somebody who can no longer abide by what society says it should be or how it should be, right? So there's this sort of a rebellious energy here. He not only refuses to obey orders, he is deliberately turns his back on the collective social status. He becomes an outcast, and through this decision, he may definitely individualize his consciousness. One of the things that Aquarius, the energy of Aquarius does, is it's the energy of individuation. It's the energy of rebelliousness. With Saturn and Jupiter being in Aquarius, there is a rebelliousness of society. People are not going to stand for the old ways of doing things. And there's a blessing in that, but there's also a challenge and a curse in that as well, because not everybody's going to agree with your idea of what the future has to look like. So we're still going to be working these things out. These ideas are not going. It's not like Joe Biden gets in and everybody's like, whoo, now we can go back to normal. There is no normal. Normal has been blown out of the water. At the same time, we have access to levels of consciousness, awareness, and co-creation that we sort of we've all really had, But once you become aware of it, you become responsible for what you're creating. And once you become responsible for what you're creating, I think you're more careful about what you're creating, right? Or I'd like to think so anyway. All right. 3 degrees. Okay, we did all that, right? Okay, let's go. And here we have the conjunction. Here's Mercury making the conjunction to Saturn. Now, Mercury just made a conjunction to Pluto, right? Next, it makes a conjunction to Saturn. It'll be making a conjunction to Jupiter, and so on and so forth. And then we'll see the sun do the same thing. And then eventually Venus will do the same thing. And so all of these personal planets move through, we could call it the Pluto gauntlet, and then the Saturn gauntlet, and then the Jupiter gauntlet. Okay, now we're in week two. So January 2nd, 2021, we have Mercury conjunct Jupiter at 6 degrees of Aquarius, right? It said Mercury is going to move to Jupiter next. 6 degrees of Aquarius is a masked figure, performs ritualistic acts in a mystery play. The keynote here is the individual's involvement in long established patterns of activity aiming at the release of collective power. This symbol represents to us social processes in their deepest occult aspect. The individual is seen having assumed a transpersonal responsibility. And this is what I'm talking about. When we become responsible for our thoughts, when we become responsible for where we put our energy, we are creating our reality in that way. And we have the power to create change and create the type of change that we want to have, not the fear, but the love. What would you love to have? What would you love to have in your life? That is what we have to focus on through this process, which is not going to be an easy process, just not. It's not the nature of it. Of course, what was that old expression? Anything worth having is usually a challenge, right? I've always found that to be true. And here we can see this this conjunction of Mercury and Jupiter. Now, the other part of Mercury and Jupiter conjunction, which is a synodic cycle, that is a year-long synodic cycle. But what's most interesting is that this actually stimulates the sign of Gemini and the sign of Sagittarius, as Jupiter is the ruler of Gemini, Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius, Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. It deals with the axis of the 3rd house and the 9th house. It's information and philosophy. It is the axis of the mind. So our minds are very attuned at this time to this energy. And so it's important that we do focus with this. Now, let me see if this is making a square pretty tightly, of course, to Mars, but more tightly to Uranus here. Okay, so that's important. Again, there's all of this pressure, right? And these are to Uranus, these are last quarter squares. These are crisis in consciousness squares. This is the process of individuation. This is taking responsibility for yourself and then taking that responsibility and improving the lives of everyone, raising all ships. None of this trickle down economics BS. This is actually taking the reins of your own life and putting your energy into the places that you both love and that can help other people. On the 12th of January, which is a Tuesday, Mercury in Aquarius makes its last quarter square to Uranus in Taurus. Mercury and Uranus have a special relationship because Mercury is the lower mind and Uranus is the higher mind. This is a last quarter crisis in consciousness. In this relationship, Uranus has the upper hand, and so it is the energy of the higher mind that comes through. It is the energy of the higher mind that helps us to individuate. This was the initial conjunction where these two planets came together. We're 3/4 of a way around. We still have a quarter of the way around the circle of 360 degrees, but we're 3/4 of the way there. The initial conjunction occurred on the 20th of April, 2020 at 7 degrees of Taurus. Okay, so Uranus and Mercury came together at 7 degrees of Taurus back in April of 2020. And it says the woman of Samaria at the ancestral well. The keynote here is the meeting of the traditional past and of the creative spirit pointing to the future. So this is where the past and the future come together, the tradition and the future come together. The future has a little bit more energy here because of the fact that Uranus is in charge of this relationship at this time. On Wednesday, the 13th of January, we have a new moon at 24 degrees of Capricorn. This new moon is very powerful because it is conjunct Pluto. Very powerful. New moons are always about new beginnings. And in Capricorn, it's becoming an authority in your own life. It's about taking responsibility. It's about putting your big girl and your big boy pants on. Right? Where do you want, you're the captain of your own ship. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? What direction do you want to take? Right? And you have to do it in a responsible manner, because this is also the sign associated with as you sow, so shall you reap, right? Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, the Lord of karma. Don't get away with anything with this. But if you work hard and you're integritous, then you get rewarded. Then you get rewarded. So the Sabian symbol for this is a woman entering a convent. It says here, total commitment to a transcendent goal. Rigid discipline conditions pure inner freedom. And it's funny because I was thinking about 2020 and how many people had to have rigid discipline, staying at home, which is not that easy to do when you're used to running around. And they had to organize their homes in such a way so that everybody could actually live in the home. There had to be boundaries set and different things. So we've had about a year, almost a year of it. Well, not quite a year, but almost a year of this energy of sort of being in a convent already, right? To a certain extent. But this is perhaps primes the pump for us to take responsibility for ourselves. The final goal is the attainment of transcendent security. Transcendent security. The ruler of the new moon in Capricorn is Saturn, right? So Saturn is at 6 degrees of Aquarius, and it says a masked figure performs ritualistic acts in a mystery play. The individual's involvement in long-established patterns of activity aiming at the release of collective power. Again, we're talking about collective power, the power to create the world that we're in together, collectively. The great mystery of the past was created by inspired seers and adepts for the purpose of transferring to a mentally conscious and humanly significant level of group operation that in the lower kingdoms of life we call instincts. Biological and cosmic energies can thus be used to ensure that social processes do not lose touch with the deeper realities of planetary and universal life. This is about being connected to the planet and to the rest of the universe, right? This is about, in a way, coming back home to who we really are and who we can be. Rituals are binding, and often performers wear masks, for they do not act as human persons, but as focal points for the release of transpersonal forces. And isn't that interesting that here we stand and they're being asked, that we're all being asked to wear masks, right? And in a way to maybe stop talking and start looking and start looking and start, aren't the eyes the what is that? What's that expression? The eyes are the windows to the soul. And with the mask on, right, we have to stop talking. I can't stop talking, but because I'm trying to teach you, I'm trying to show you something, right? But let's start watching and looking and thinking and utilizing our third eye, right? Also on Wednesday, there's the third Mars-Saturn square. This is occurring at 4 degrees of Taurus and Aquarius. This is a crisis in action square. Now, Mars has been retrograde, right? Mars was retrograde in Aries. Mars made conjunctions to all the planets in Capricorn in March of 2020. And then in the summer, it made its first quarter crisis in action square to Pluto, to Saturn, to Jupiter. Then it went retrograde. And then in the fall, it made its second. And now it's making the third and final square. This is the crisis in action. This is when we're being asked to take an action in order to build foundations for a new awareness that we have. And that new awareness came to us in March. That's when we closed down for COVID, if you don't remember. Okay, so we have a crisis in action. Mars at 4 degrees of Taurus. This was the, this is where it's happening. So we have Mars at 4 degrees of Taurus, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? I'm talking about this breakthrough. Riches that come from linking the celestial and the earthly nature. It is in a square to Saturn at 4 degrees of Aquarius. A Hindu yogi demonstrates his healing powers. The discipline use of spiritual energies in restoring the natural harmony disturbed by man's inharmonic attempts to transcend nature through the mind. And so this is another, like, how do we get what we need and get what we want? We co-create with the universe in alignment with natural law. In alignment with natural law. Do not take more than you need. Do not shit where you eat. You know, these natural laws, right? As you sow, so shall you reap. Taking that into consideration, remembering that and moving forward with that. This third Mars-Saturn square at 4 degrees of Taurus Aquarius, this particular cycle began on March 31st, 2020, when these two planets came to agree at 1 degree of Aquarius. What is important about 1 degree of Aquarius? Well, that was the degree of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at the end of 2020. Right? The new beginning, the new world, the new age, perhaps, the Aquarian age everybody's talking about, right? People are becoming more aware. And then, of course, 1 degree of Aquarius is an old Adobe mission in California, the power inherent in all great human works to endure far beyond the worker's lifespans. So this is, what are you building? What are you building? And will it survive beyond you, right? This is a time for us to do just that. The other squares that I talked about, August 24th was the first one. It occurred at 27 of Aries and Capricorn. The second one occurred at 26 degrees of Aries Capricorn, and that occurred in September. That was when Mars was retrograde. Okay, so we have these like 3 pushes. And this is like a Mars's movement. Saturn is the immovable, like bringing the mountain to Mohammed, or breaking through the mountain, or climbing the mountain. This takes great effort. And we've had 3 tries, and this is the big sort of push forward. And this energy, this pushing, slow pushing, co-creative energy is all coming, right, forward as a new president in the United States takes office. Very powerful. And here we have, here's the new moon. And we can see here the sun and moon at 24 degrees of Capricorn. Incidentally, this occurs at midnight, right? Midnight, 00:000 a.m. And we have, so this conjunction is occurring at the very bottom of this chart, conjunct Pluto. This actually could be some sort of seismic activity with all of this here. So be aware of that as well. This energy that we're feeling, this co-creative energy that we're feeling, the earth is, we're co-creating with the earth, right? We're co-creating with the universe. Things are going to be moving and shaking. We can expect a big movement and a big shaking with this. So we may see some sort of seismic activity. Just be aware of that. And here we have, is this the next day? The next day, the sun makes a conjunction to Pluto at 25 degrees of Capricorn. Incidentally, numerologically, the day, the 14th, vibrates to a 20/2. This is the judgment card, the last judgment, also associated on the tree of life with Pluto. So this is very powerful, where the sun comes together with Pluto. Remember, I said the sun's going to come together with Pluto, then it's going to come together with Saturn, and then it's going to come together with Jupiter, right? Doing those synodic cycles. This is a year-long synodic cycle, illuminating an unconscious desire, Pluto. The unconscious desire, Pluto, is made conscious through illumination, the sun. Pluto in Capricorn is our collective evolution, very powerful times. Says the synodic cycle that illuminates our collective unconscious desires around power. 25 degrees of Capricorn, a store filled with precious Oriental rugs. We have it again at 25 degrees of Capricorn. The use of cultural and artistic processes as a means to enhance personal comfort and appreciation. It says a rug always implied to some extent something on which a person stands or sits. It is a foundation for cultural understanding, and such it can have a magical or sacred meaning, as in the case of prayer rugs. So this is about creating your own magic carpet. Where you going? What you're going to do with that? Where you going to go? Where you going to go? Where you going to go? And here we have the Sun-Pluto conjunction. Now this occurs the next day. So we had the new moon. It was all down here, right? And here we have this conjunction occurring in the case of the United States in the 11th house of the Senate, and the Congress. This is also technology. So that's kind of exciting. And then because things weren't under pressure enough on the 14th, Uranus stations direct at 7 degrees of Taurus, the woman of Samaria at the ancestral well. Says the meeting of the traditional past and the creative spirit pointing to the future. Now, this is something that I took out of Dane Rudger's book, and I think it's very interesting. It says, early in his ministry, Jesus meets a Samaritan woman at an ancestral well. The woman belongs to a tribe despised by the Jews. Moreover, she is unmarried and therefore on the fringe of even her own society. It is to just this kind of woman that Jesus reveals that he is the Messiah. I am he. A revelation that he apparently will not bestow even upon his own disciples, at least not in words. Words in occultism are the creative factor. And so this is for all of, and I'll include myself, for all of us who have felt like outsiders, even within their own communities, and who've never felt quite like we belonged. This is a time for us. Uranus directs. This is an increase when the planets change direction, when the transpersonal planets change direction, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, there is an increase of energy, and then an expression as it moves forward. So this can be actually a very explosive time. Again, we are looking at seismic stuff that can happen, seismic shifts. And not all seismic shifts have to do with blowing things up, but that's a possibility as well. And where do we have it? Here we have Uranus stationary. And you can see now we still have Mars in Taurus moving closer. Right now, it's a little it's a little more than 3 degrees away from Uranus. We are feeling this pressure. And now Uranus stands still. You know, really, this is the last push for us to move into the new age. I can't even, it's amazing. I even when I was doing this with the numerology, I realized that, like, I didn't realize just how big January is going to be. And remember, the numerology for January is the Lover's card. What is your choice? What is your choice? Are you in your heart? Are you utilizing your third eye? That path that connects the third eye with the heart, and the divine feminine with the divine sun. Okay. Now, again, because not enough things are happening, we have another synodic cycle that is at a critical point. This is a last quarter square between Jupiter and Uranus. Jupiter and Uranus. This is a synodic cycle that began back in 2010 and 2011. Yes, this is one of the longer synodic cycles that we talk about. And we're 3/4 of the way around the circle with this synodic cycle. Jupiter is at 7 degrees of Aquarius. Uranus is at 7 degrees of Taurus. This is part of a longer cycle that began in 2010, 2011, with 3 exact conjunctions between Jupiter and Uranus. Incidentally, at that time, Chiron was very close to both Jupiter and Uranus. So we have to add Chiron in Aquarius. Chiron in Aquarius is the wound of isolation and the wound of feeling different and not feeling like you're from this planet, right? So we have to include that in this energy as well. This is the planting the seeds for the expansion of consciousness. That's what happened in 2010 and 2011. And if you go back to there, you'll realize that was the Arab Spring occurred then. The earthquake, the Fukushima earthquake occurred there. The subsequent tidal wave, tsunami occurred 2011. 2010, 2011, we started with the cardinal cross that ended up being the thing that really sort of came in its power between 2012 and 2015. The 7 exact squares between Pluto and Uranus. The last time those planets were together was in the 60s. So this is like all of this stuff sort of coming up all together. This then in 10 and 11 was the start of the Great Awakening. And now we are awake, and we are even going to be more awake on the other side of this. So just to go back to those times, June 8th, 2010, we had the first of these conjunctions at 1 degree of Aries. Why is that important? We had an eclipse at 1 degree of Cancer on the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. In the winter solstice, on the summer, when the sun went into the 1st degree of Capricorn, we had the Pluto. No, I'm getting excited. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, right? So these are all connected. They're all connected. That June 8th date, the vibration was a 17.8. That's Aquarius. That's the star card in the tarot. September 18th, 2010, we had the next conjunction at 29 degrees of Pisces. And then on January 4th, 2011, we had the third of these conjunctions at 28 degrees of Pisces. So we had Aries, Pisces, Pisces. So it wasn't just about new beginnings, but it was also about waking us up, the end of Pisces, the end of the Piscean age, but more likely the realization that perhaps the victim victimizer um, mental structure, emotional structure, Judeo-Christian structure no longer serves. And becoming aware of that. That was part of the awakening. We couldn't just move into the new unless we dealt with the old. And I think that's what's happening. So incidentally, the Sabian symbol for 7 degrees of Aquarius, this is where Jupiter is a child is seen born out of an egg. It reminds me of Mork from Mork, right? The emergence of new mutations according to great rhythms of the cosmos. The Sabian symbol for 7 degrees of Taurus is the woman of Samaria at the ancestral well, the meeting of the traditional past and of the creative spirit pointing to the future. This is a rebirth, a new birth, a new birth. And these were the symbols for those days where we had the conjunction, just in case you want to know. June 8th, 2010, one of Aries, a woman just risen out of the sea. A seal is embracing her. This is the urge to be, first degree of Aries. September 18th, 2010, 29 degrees of Pisces, light breaking into many colors through a prism. We are all the same. We are all light, and yet we vibrate at different vibrations. And it is the rainbow. It is all the people and all the light, even those people who drive you nuts and you don't want to talk to. We need everybody for this, guys. And then January 4th, 28 degrees of Pisces, a fertile garden under a full moon reveals variety of full-grown vegetables, reminding us that abundance is at our fingertips. Abundance is at our fingertips. And here we have the square. Here we have Uranus, Jupiter making the square. And of course, these are within a little more than a degree away from each other. And this is the 17th. On the 19th, the sun will ingress into Aquarius, right? This is that first degree of Aquarius. It goes back to Saturn and Mars at 1 degree of Aquarius. It goes back to Jupiter and Saturn at 1 degree of Aquarius. Now the sun comes in 1 degree of Aquarius, the day before the inauguration. January 20th, the day of the inauguration. Mars conjunct Uranus at 7 degrees of Taurus, the woman of Samaria at the ancestral well, the traditional and the new and the future meeting. Planting the seeds of rebelliousness or paradigm shifting actions. Mars conjunct Uranus. This is a 2-year synodic cycle, 2-year synodic cycle. Within about a year, I believe a year, we will see what this has meant for us. And I did not look to see when that's going to be, and I apologize. But I think I'll talk about that when the day comes. Definitely, or when it gets close, we'll talk about that, what the possibilities of that could be. This particular conjunction, when it's cast through the United States, occurs in the 11th house, the natural house for Aquarius. How lovely. In the chart of the US. The 9th house rules the masses, society as a whole, and groups. The 11th house, excuse me. In charts for events, the 11th house is often prominent with events that occur with a large group of people. Now, of course, we're talking about the inauguration, right? There should be large groups of people. Normally, there are large groups of people, but will there be large groups of people? Or will we all be at home? It's really about focusing our consciousness, because we don't have to physically be there, We can just focus with our minds, right? And focus with our hearts. There are going to be people, I guess, down in Florida. The Trumpsters are going to be there for Trump, who wants to have some sort of thing there. There'll be a group of people there, and there may even be people in Washington who don't want to, who are doing something against the Biden-Harris administration or whatever. Who knows? Um, but we have the power of our intention. Mind and heart come together. There's nothing that can beat it. There's nothing that can beat it. Love, if you don't mind me saying, trumps fear every time. Love trumps Trump. The 11th house is the house of allies of the country, institutions of government such as local governments, senates, and other legislative bodies. And we have the conjunction here. And we can see, and here's the conjunction happening in the 11th house. We have the moon very close. The moon is, and then over the next, during that day, the moon is going to go over that heart. So it becomes very personal to us, very, very personal to us. And we have to remember that this is all with a square to Jupiter and a square to Saturn here, right? And look at this. This is interesting because this right here is Vulcan. Vulcan is the power behind the throne. And so and that is almost exactly square, this conjunction. So there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things happening. And I just want to look at this very briefly. I'm going to do something bigger on this, but I thought we would bring this up because this is the inauguration chart. Where does this very, very powerful conjunction sit? Well, it sits right here. It sits right here. The inauguration happens before this conjunction. So we'll feel the pressure all the same because the moon is still in Aries at this time. This is somewhat worrisome because the 12th house is hidden enemies. And the sun is the president in the 10th house of the president. We have Saturn there. We have Jupiter there. We have Pluto on the other side. So this is, I just hope that they don't do the inauguration outside. That's all I hope that. I remember when I watched Barack Obama walk down the street, I was on pins and needles the whole time till he got back in the car. Because we knew, as wonderful as it was for some people, it was the end of the world. And when people think it's the end of the world, they can do all kinds of stuff. So I just hope that, I'm sure the security is very good. And we do have the protective energy of Jupiter here. Jupiter is quite a protective energy, but I feel like things are going to be very controlled. Things are going to be very controlled, and I think that's important. 3 days after the inauguration, Mars makes his first quarter square to Jupiter. This is third of 3. It occurs at 8 degrees of Aquarius and 8 degrees of Taurus. The Sabian symbol for 8 degrees of Taurus is a sleigh on land uncovered by snow, the value of anticipating and preparing for expectable conditions. Squaring Jupiter at 8 degrees of Aquarius, beautifully gowned wax figures on display. The inspiration one may derive from the appearance of exemplars who present us with the archetypes of a new culture. And so I feel like this is actually a positive symbols for this energy. This last quarter square between Mars and Jupiter. And if we look, this being the third, we had 2 others. The first one occurred on the 4th of August at 20 degrees of Aries Capricorn with Mars direct. And then the second one had happened on the 19th of October. it also at 20 degrees of Aries and Capricorn, incidentally. And that was when Mars was retrograde. So this is the last sort of push. It's interesting when you look at astrological charts and when women give birth, Mars Jupiter aspects are very good for giving birth because it gives you a lot of strength, a lot of strength. So this is a continuation of the rebirth that we are feeling. And here is this last quarter square. Let's see, where are we here? Here's Mars. That's in it, just off of its conjunction with Uranus. Square Jupiter here. Every time Jupiter and Mars squared each other, I believe there was, oh, no, that was Pluto and Mars. That was Pluto and Jupiter. I mean Pluto and Jupiter. Yeah, okay. So just ignore what I just said. Okay, so on the 23rd, we also have the Sun conjunct Saturn. This is the synodic cycle of the Sun and Saturn, the illumination of the structures needed, perhaps. A council of ancestors is seen implementing the efforts of a young leader. That's interesting. The root foundation of past performance with power, which power and sustain whatever decision is made in a crisis by an individual. The whole past of mankind stands behind an individual effort, especially in times of critical decisions. There is a critical decision to be made. I am not going to speculate. Just know that, again, heart and mind together, positive expectation, focusing, co-creating, and moving forward out of the darkness. And here's the Sun-Saturn conjunction right here, occurring in the 5th house of creativity and children and luck and love. All right. Week 4, January 24th to the 31st. On the 26th, which is a Tuesday, Neptune squares the nodes of the moon. Neptune has been square of the nodes of the moon for months, but this is the exact square. The resolution node of Neptune squaring the nodes is the south node. What does that mean? It means that in order for us to evolve in the direction of the north node, we must first visit the past and visit the south node. Go back to the past and review your beliefs, opinions, and need for isolation and freedom. What no longer serves, let it go. Let it go. Activating the nodal axis of the mind. It can be inspirational or it can be confusing. So people are going to experience both those things. In fact, people have been experiencing all of those things through this whole process of Neptune square the nodes. And we can see it here. We have Neptune square the nodes of the moon exactly. It is still opposite Vesta. And it is, we have Ceres here opposite, moving into exact opposition to Vesta. This square here, this mutable square with the nodes of the moon and Neptune and Vesta and now Ceres, this has to do with the virus and the vaccines. There's that energy right there. This is also a doorway for us to let go of the past and move into the future. The mutable signs, that's what the mutable signs do. They move us from the fixed signs, the fixity of ideas or the way it has to be or the structures that have to be that way, into the new cardinal energy of new beginnings. So the sun has its last quarter square to Uranus on the 26th as well. It's interesting because there's days when everything happens, and this is true. There's a couple of days that everything happens. And of course, that 1 week with the inauguration week is just nuts. But it continues. Sun's last quarter square at 7 degrees of Aquarius and Taurus. the woman of Samaria and the child being born out of an egg. Again, we have a crisis in consciousness. The sun and Uranus. Uranus is revolution, and the sun is life purpose. So the revolution is here, folks. And here we go. The sun's last quarter square. Here's the sun at 7 degrees. And here is Uranus at 7 degrees. Uranus is in the 3rd house. The sun is in the 12th house. They're both mutable houses. This is the house of media, and this is the house of open enemies. No, hidden enemies. We have to be aware that there are certain energies that don't want things to change. Of course, things are going to change, so it doesn't really matter what they want, because we're evolving. But we need to be aware of that as we move forward. We can't just assume everybody is full of love and light, even though we are, right? Okay. Thursday, January 28th, Venus conjunct Pluto. Early morning dew sparkles as sunlight floods the field. That is the symbol for the degree that this is occurring at. An exalted feeling that rises within the soul of the individual who has successfully passed through the long night, which has tested his strength and his faith. Transfiguration. Transfiguration. We're on the other side of this. We're on the other side of this. And here is the conjunction, and it is occurring at 26 degrees of Capricorn, right up there in the 10th house. I'm going to say this because it came to me. This could be a woman taking power. All right. On the 28th, we also have a full moon in Leo. The moon is at 10 degrees of Leo. Incidentally, that is Donald Trump's Pluto, 10 degrees of Leo. And it is close to the north node of the United States, which is at 6 degrees of Leo. And I believe that is also where Joe Biden's Pluto is. Joe Biden's Pluto is on the north node of the United States of America. So this is all fateful time. The moon at 10 degrees of Leo, his full moons are points of awareness. Early morning dew sparkles as sunlight floods the field. This is the same degree that we had. No, this isn't the same degree. Goodness gracious. Oh, I don't know. Well, anyway, the exalted feeling that rises with the soul of the individual has successfully passed through a long night. Opposite the sun in Aquarius, a man who had for a time become the embodiment of popular ideal is made to realize that as a person, he is not the ideal. The need to deal with human beings as persons rather than screens upon which one projects one's dreams and ideals. So this is an awakening of sorts. This is a realization of sorts. This is the light coming in from the dark to dispel the darkness, and people seeing things for what they really are. And here we have the actual the full moon here, the 2nd house and the 8th house in the chart of the United States. This is our resources. This is our shared resources. This is what we have. This is our debt. Okay, this is taxes even. And we have Jupiter. It's very close to Jupiter. So this full moon has the energy of Jupiter connected to it, because then the sun makes a conjunction to Jupiter at 10 degrees of Aquarius. And the man who had a time become the embodiment of a popular ideal is made to realize that as a person, he is not the ideal. This image brings our attention to an issue that is basic and may confront us in various forms, person versus archetype. This can mean a critical need for self-reevaluation. Self-reevaluation. Sun-Jupiter conjunction. Here we go. This is on the 28th as well. I'm telling you, everything happens on the same day in January, but there's like 6 or 7 days that everything happens. And then on the 30th of January, because we have to think about everything that just happened, Mercury goes retrograde at 27 degrees of Aquarius. The chart for the United States, the Sibley chart that I like to use when I look at the United States, has the moon at 27, 28 degrees of Aquarius, and that is the people. The people. 27 degrees of Aquarius, an ancient pottery bowl filled with fresh violets. The importance of traditional skills and artistic values deeply rooted in man's instinctual feelings as frames of reference for man's most authentic emotions. This retrograde phase will end on February 20th, 2021 at 12 degrees of Aquarius. On a vast staircase stand people of different types, graduated upwards. The necessity of recognizing differences of types and levels of development wherever human beings live and work together. This is about accepting one another for where you're at. Not everybody is as evolved. Not everybody is going to have the same ideas about things, but if they are in alignment with heart and mind, really, I think we need to look at that as we move forward. So this is pretty important stuff, guys. We are going to be, the other side of this is going to look very, very different. And we'll take it together one day at a time with the birds and the squirrels when I can get out. I'm here for you. I know you're there for me. I hope you enjoyed this. And I know it went long, so apologies for that. Much love, everyone. Like, subscribe, donate if you will, if you wish. I will be doing a Kabbalah, an introduction to Kabbalah come February 2021. I'll keep you posted on that. For those of my students who have taken my beginners class, we are having a continuation of that class starting on the 7th of January. So much love, folks. We're gonna move through this together and we'll all be better for it. Take care.